Hi everybody, it's Harvard lawyer Lee. Well, believe it or not, Amber Heard has asked the court to give her a new trial. That's kind of hard to believe given how incredibly awful the last trial was for her. But she's actually asked for that, or for the judge to just give her some relief and declare she won some issues. That's maybe a little more believable. I want to unpack this new motion to set aside the verdict that she's made so you can understand what her arguments are. They're important not just because Judge Azcarate is going to consider them, but also because this is our window into what the appeal is going to be about. This is our preview where we learn what it is that she thinks was such a big issue that it should be reversed. The whole thing should be overturned in her favor because of these errors. So after a lot of thought, I think what I'm going to do is try to go through this pretty quickly and make this something where it's shorter and simpler. Would you let me know in the comments, do you prefer that, or do you like a really long version where I talk in detail, sentence by sentence about it? Could you let me know? I would really appreciate it. It would help me plan my content. She makes 7 really arguments. One of them I already dealt with yesterday. It was the most sensational of all, and that's that one of the jurors was a fake. That argument, I will link that video below, at the end of this video, so you can just go right over to it. But essentially, she said that one juror who was supposed to be born in 1945 and age 77 was actually someone different. It was someone born much later, 1970, and they were 52 years old, not 77. So that sensational argument I've already addressed, and you'll definitely want to watch that video. But right now I want to talk about the other 6 arguments that she makes. One of these is probably the most important. That's the one that's really going to be, I think, the main issue when it comes time for the appeal. Her first argument had several parts to it, but the basic point was that the damages the jury awarded are just unsupported. That the jury just went off on a bender, gave out a bunch of damages. There was no real reason for it. So her first argument was, look, there's no evidence that there were pecuniary damages, money damages from the op-ed. And here she just rehashes all the stuff we've heard before, that Disney wasn't going to hire Johnny anyway. Johnny wasn't going to work for Disney. Disney didn't care about the op-ed, all those sorts of things. We've already dealt with that. There was one argument she made, Amber did, that was new and that I think merits a little discussion. What she said was that Disney hadn't even written Pirate 6 during the time period when the damages counted. Much less had they made it. And since Johnny doesn't get paid until a film shoots, he didn't really lose any money during the time period that the damages are being awarded for. He might lose money 2 years from now, but since it hasn't filmed yet, he hasn't lost any money yet. So the jury couldn't award damages for that. Amber even says that Mr. Depp represented, and this is a little peek behind the curtain, actually. You know how they always go up to the front and talk to the judge? I never really realized, being the attorney, how curious you are when the people go up to the front and you're wondering, what are they talking? Why am I being excluded here? I want to know what they're talking about. But yeah, this is a little peek behind the curtain here. This is what Amber says. To avoid explaining to the jury the UK final judgment finding Mr. Depp to have committed 12 acts of domestic violence, in other words, to keep the UK judgment out, Mr. Depp represented to the court he would limit his damages claims to the period December 18, 2018, that's when the op-ed was published, through November 2nd, 2020, the date of the UK judgment. This is going to be important all through this. This is probably the most important point made anywhere in the briefing. It's going to appear again in an even more important context in just a minute. So essentially what she's saying is that you can't ask for any damages, because you agreed you wouldn't, outside the period from December 2018 through November 2020. That's it. And if the damages happened here or the damages happened there, those don't count. The only thing that you can talk about are damages that happen in that little period. That's her argument, and what she's going to be asking both the appellate court and Judge Azcarate to do something about. Now, is that a winner here? I think not, because there were tons of pieces of evidence that were related to loss of money damages from the op-ed. So I don't think the judge is very likely to give any credence to that. Amber also just made sort of the general argument, hey, the compensatory and punitive damages awards were excessive, way too much. Again, I don't see that going anywhere. There was a lot of evidence, big numbers tossed around. I don't see that. Now, here's the one that I think matters more. Amber argues that Johnny was not entitled to damages for any conduct before the op-ed, which is true. Because the suit is about the op-ed. So the suit starts from there forward. What Amber argues is that Johnny spent a lot of time talking about all this damage that happened before the op-ed, and the jury must have included that in their damages. They must have included that because Johnny Depp kept asking them to. She quotes numerous things that Johnny Depp said, or that Camille Vasquez, or some of them may have been Ben Chu as well, said in closing arguments. Here's some examples for you. That Depp, and you'll remember this if you watch his testimony, began his testimony saying, about 6 years ago, Ms. Heard made some quite heinous and disturbing allegations. He said they spread globally, and he talked about standing up for his kids who were in high school at the time. He talked repeatedly about 6 years. It has really taken this full 6 years. It's been 6 years of trying times. He also said that Ms. Heard going directly to a court to get a TRO, that was sort of the beginning of the ball rolling down the hill and gaining momentum. So they're saying, okay, all of that testimony, all of those arguments were irrelevant because that doesn't matter. Camille Vasquez made similar statements in the closing arguments. You'll probably remember these if you watched them. On May 27, 2016, Ms. Heard walked into a courthouse in Los Angeles, California to get a no-notice ex parte restraining order against Mr. Depp, and in doing so, ruined his life by falsely telling the world that she was a survivor of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp. Today, on May 27, 2022, exactly 6 years later, we ask you to give Mr. Depp his life back by telling the world that Mr. Depp is not the abuser Ms. Heard said he is, and hold Ms. Heard accountable for her lies. Remember that comment? She also said that's when his life ended. That was 6 years ago to this day. She said freeing him from the prison in which he has lived for the last 6 years. So all of those quotes, Amber's team is saying, relate to a period of time that doesn't count. It doesn't matter what happened to Johnny before the op-ed because he's not suing about that. The statute of limitations had passed. He has no right to sue for that. So all that matters is the going forward part. And the jury was confused. Now, here's how Johnny's team will probably address this. One thing they'll look for is whether or not Amber's team objected. Because if they didn't object to some of these comments, then they may have waived their right to object to that and to appeal on that. So that'll be one thing they'll look for. They're also going to look at what limitations were put on the jury. I went back and did a quick look through the jury verdict form and the jury instructions, and I saw specifically that the jury was told nothing from November 2nd, 2020 to the future. You got to stop there. There weren't statements about you can't go earlier, but there were statements that this is what we're looking at. The op-ed, what are the damages that came from this statement in the op-ed? So I think that the way the court will splice this out is the court will say, look, I was very specific about what they could award damages for, so I don't believe the jury was prejudiced or that the jury was unclear about what they were supposed to do. So all of that, believe it or not, was the first argument. Now the second argument, much shorter, is that the verdicts are inconsistent. I strongly disagree with that. What Amber is saying is you can't simultaneously say that what was said about Johnny Depp was untrue, he was not an abuser, and say that Amber Heard wins on her own defamation claim. But you absolutely can, and that's because of what Amber's claim was. What Adam Waldman, Johnny Depp's attorney, went out and said was this. Quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. Not everything that Amber said, but this. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops, but the first attempt didn't do the trick. The officers came to the penthouses, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damage to face or property. So Amber and her friends spilled a little wine and roughed the place up, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, and then placed a second call to 911. See how specific that is? That is not just like, was there any abuse? Did Amber ever lie about abuse? It's like, that day, did Amber rough the place up, spill some wine, get her story straight with her friends, and call the police again. And that's what there wasn't evidence about. That one comment, that one particular thing. She lost on the other two. So there is no inconsistency, because the jury absolutely could believe that Amber was not abused in any way, and that Amber, on that particular day, did not try to hoodwink the police by roughing the place up, spilling some wine, and telling them a story that was untrue. Both of those things are entirely possible to be true. Now, the third argument is that the First Amendment bars recovery for defamation by implication. This is really, really a technical argument, so I'm going to try to make this as bare bones as possible. Amber says, look, Johnny Depp used a theory of defamation by implication. You can't have that against a public figure or when it involves a matter of public concern. So what are they talking about? What is that defamation by implication? Well, here's what it means. It's premised not on direct statements, but on false suggestions arising from otherwise truthful statements. So what was said was true, but when you heard that, it kind of implied something that was untrue. And so I don't think that's what this is at all. This is not defamation against implication. The statements made themselves were not true. And the jury found that. Was the statement false? Yes, that statement was false. Not just impliedly false. Defamation by implication is not implying who it was. It's that the statement was true and implied something bad about someone. So that's where I think they just have the wrong name for it. I don't even think it is defamation by implication. And in any event, Amber acknowledges that Virginia law has not gone where she wants it to go yet. She would have to make this argument on appeal and get new law made to support what she's arguing. So the fourth argument, finding of defamation by implication, is contrary to law. That sounds fancy. All it means is this is once again about the tweet, the retweet, the she didn't write the headline. That's all this is. The judge is not going to be interested in this. She has already ruled that while Amber Heard didn't write the headline, perhaps, or at least there was some suggestion that the Washington Post did, that doesn't matter because Amber did retweet it and it had the title right there. So she's responsible for that. The next argument is that Depp didn't present any evidence of actual malice. Actually, all this argument is kind of arguing that Amber Heard was just crazy enough to believe what she was saying, and therefore she couldn't have had actual malice because she really thought this was true, even if she was wrong. I think that argument is going nowhere, including on appeal. The sixth argument is that Johnny didn't have enough evidence to support the idea that he was the one who was being defamed. This is actually worth unpacking a little bit because this is just way wrong, I think. So Ben Chu said this in opening. He said Amber Heard never said, word one about SV until after she got sued. And the reason was she was like, according, to their argument, well, oh no, wow, I've been caught out. This title said SV, better come up with some quick. So that was the implication that Ben Chu was making, was that she made it up and she did it to get out of trouble. What Amber's argues from this is, well, okay, Mr. Depp's theory was that the allegations that she made after the fact, for the first time, caused readers to understand that the title was about Mr. Depp. That's not the argument at all. The argument has nothing to do with the world understanding that it was about Johnny. It has to do with her making up the stories to cover her tracks. That's what Ben Chu was arguing. So then the next thing they argue is that there was just no evidence that would cause anybody to believe this was about Johnny Depp. To me, that argument makes absolutely no sense. How about the fact that everyone immediately assumed it was about Johnny Depp, that newspapers ran with that story? How about the fact that the ACLU testified at trial that they knew the article was about Johnny Depp? That, in fact, it used to say Johnny Depp until that got taken out. So I don't think that makes any sense. So Amber's very last argument is that Johnny Depp can't recover for anything that Amber Heard said back in the TRO or anything that Amber Heard said in the UK proceeding because those are privileged. While that's true, it misses the point. It's sort of the same thing that Amber is doing when she went out and did the interviews and said the same things that she had just been found liable for by a jury. Here's the problem. Yes, you are protected by judicial privilege when you are in court. But as soon as you leave the court, you are no longer protected by that judicial privilege. And so she was not in court when she wrote the op-ed. She was not in court when she made those statements. Therefore, she doesn't have any judicial protection. Thanks for watching. I hope that was clear and explained what's happening and that you enjoyed it. And I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Be sure to like and subscribe.